Mr. James, if you're ready, I recognize you for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ladies, gentlemen, first, as a brother in arms, I want to thank you for your service. I graduated from West Point in 2004. I became a Ranger qualified Apache pilot and flew 750 hours combat in Operation Iraqi Freedom. We fought in different wars, but we all stood up for this nation. Our service continues today. You answered the call initially because of something deep down in your soul that taught you, that told you that you had an obligation, not an option, to continue your service and give back, even to the point where you felt called, putting yourself in grave danger to answer those in the world who also share what we believe: all men created equal, all men and women allowed to breathe free, and protecting American ideals are things that you did, putting your lives on the line to protect those. I want to personally thank you for your service. You've said many times that there is a feeling that's palpable amongst the American people that we have betrayed our allies and we have betrayed those who stood up with us during our time of need, and we abandoned them in theirs. We also got some feedback on addressing the 72,000 who are already over here in a probationary status, and also care teams not being funded. My first question is, in the little recess that we've had, it's been a long day, I grant you that, and I appreciate it. But are there any other things that we can do right now, any gaps that we can address in Congress to make sure that that we can make amends for this retreat in some small way?
Congressman, I'd like to answer. There's been mention before of the Afghan Adjustment Act. I am personally in favor of passing that act. I believe it's a bipartisan negotiated framework. It provides the adjustment of the status that the Afghans that are here that don't have currently a pathway to citizenship. It enlarges SIV eligibility, and it reinserts Congress's prerogative in this area. And so I think a number of folks that are sitting behind me also support it, and we've advocated for that in the past.
If I could just offer one thing, Congressman. On top of that, I believe I had spoken earlier about the NMRG, the National Mine Reduction Group. This group of individuals was actually not part of the Afghan Special Operations community, but were rather specially trained by Afghan SOF for force protection and mine clearing. Therefore, they're eligible right now for SIV. They're extremely organized, very coherent, and there are groups right now that are in this room that are actively guiding them, and I believe could be one of the first big wins in how we get the most at-risk Afghans over here post-blast. And I think looking at the NMRG as our first look for severely at-risk groups to get over here because they're already SIV eligible, if we could lean in with the private groups that are working that right now, I think we could see an immediate success.
Yeah, thank you so much for the question, Congressman. That's really, I think the most important thing we can do is really focus on what we can do now. There are so many things, the things that fall within Congress's purview, just to kind of go down some of the things within the Afghan Adjustment Act, right? 72,000 people, many of whom are applying for asylum right now, who, that is not a system that's designed to handle it, and it's already incredibly backlogged. So by creating a separate pathway, it will allow all of those 72,000 to go through an additional vetting process, but also provide for their continued employment status, all of the things that come with immigration status, and prevent them from falling into, right, not just being out of status and subject to deportation hearing, but employment authorizations and all these other things. So just to double down on how important that is, some of the other provisions that were within that act that failed to pass in December and then March last year include expanding the SIV program for folks like Lieutenant Colonel Mann is talking about, both the NMRG group, the FTPs, certain Afghan Special Forces groups. So like we needed the Afghan Adjustment Act yesterday. We really needed it last year because we are coming up on this parole deadline for so many people, and it's going to affect, like in St. Louis, our local communities, employers who took a lot of responsibility on giving these people jobs. If those folks fall out of employment authorization status, that affects them and their ability to make a living. But also, it's going to make it difficult for small businesses in the future to be able to hire refugees and people who make our communities better. More oversight on the State Department on the SIV program. We need better numbers and data in order to know where we need to make those changes. Software updates, just more funding for that program particularly, and more oversight. So when those fixes don't happen, Congress can call them to account. Like we really need like a strong congressional oversight presence on these programs, in addition to keeping them funded and viable. Thank you.
Thank you for your answer. Thank you for your service. I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. James. Mr. James yields back.